The spring is over and we're heading into the summer, and these football teams are getting themselves prepared for another chance to make a run for the 2026 Big Ten Championship, as well as a possibility for the national championship. We've separated the contenders from the pretenders, and it's time to take a look at an early 2026 power rating for the Big Ten Conference here tonight on Hoosier Tailgate Live. Welcome in, everybody. I'm the coach, Shannon Griffith. Glad to have you along tonight. Do us a big favor. Hit that like and subscribe button there that you can find on YouTube. And if you are somebody that likes to listen to podcasts, do the same thing there. Give us a like, give us a review, a rating. Greatly appreciated. Helps a ton. And it's much appreciated from us here at the Hoosier Tailgate, as well as the Hoosier.com. Well, tonight it's time to look at those scenarios that we just talked about. But before we get into that, there's been a lot of news here over the last couple of days in college football and a little bit of high school football. But first, I talk a little bit about what was done in the state of Indiana via the IHSAA, voting to allow the high school football players to utilize name, image, and likeness and not be jeopardizing any amateur status. So that clears the way for kids to utilize NIL. Now, that is a little bit different than what they're doing at the college level. This would be more about kids following via social media and Red Bull wanting to do something with them. They could do that. A local establishment such as a restaurant in town, they could pay him for his name, image, and likeness and stuff. So it's a good thing to see in that respect, because Indiana puts them out there with other states across the country. But it's also a situation as well, is how does that impact top recruits, especially in the state of Indiana? So how does that change the possibilities of the sales kid down at Lawrence North that Indiana wants bad? And there are a lot of Indiana alums within the Indianapolis area who own businesses. What does it do to make the pot a little sweeter for him to make a commitment to Indiana? So it will be interesting to see how that goes over, how it becomes utilized. I don't think it's going to be for every kid that's being recruiting. I do see it for the top recruits, 4 and 5 star recruits, potentially in towns or big cities that have established businesses that could pay a little bit of dollars and cents for a kid's name, image, and likeness to help him along. But we shall see. It's no more than a nice thing to see Indiana, the state of Indiana, getting behind that so that they can get things up to speed. And, as we say, it will have some adjustments along the way, but again, it will help in the long run, especially with kids in NIL coming to the forefront, even when they're going into college and stuff. So that was good news to hear from Indiana as a part of a recruiting aspect that may or may not impact, Indiana's recruiting, whether a kid's in Indiana or other states that allow this. We'll have to wait and see in that regard. The other thing is the situation that's revolving around the college football playoffs, as well as the college basketball playoffs in terms of expansion. The AFC, American Football Coaches Association, which has some power as it pertains to, the NCAA and what they vote on and how they implement things into the structure with the NCAA. So it is a powerful body, represents all the schools from A to Z, from Division I for Division III. But the Division I coaches have voted to expand the college football playoffs to 24 teams, as well as eliminate conference championships, and looking at moving up the calendar in some way so that they can be done earlier with the college football playoffs. And we talked about this from Indiana's standpoint. They did not get done until January the 19th. You had kids transferring into Indiana for, the portal, because that was only open for so long. And we had teams that were preparing for, all the different conference playoffs, bowl games and such, and they were trying to also recruit. So they're looking at that as a possible expansion. It's not been put into, I guess you would say, the black and white per se right now. But again, it's pretty interesting that they would jump to 24 teams, considering the Big Ten had proposed this a long time ago with the SEC, and there was a big hang up there between both of them. But by expanding, what that could potentially do, that could potentially change how the broadcasting rights for that goes, because I think that it puts ESPN back into a bidding situation because it's a change, and it opens the door for, potentially other networks to get involved when it comes to the playoffs. But that'll be interesting to see. I heard college basketball. Maybe anybody that's in the chat could help, but something to the effect of the basketball tourney expanding to 76 teams is what I've seen. So it's some crazy things with the basketball aspect of things. But again, these are just ideas, and we'll see what happens here with that. I do not think they would automatically go back up with the number of playoff teams for this year. Also, remember tonight, we appreciate your joining us, all as well as participating. Got a question, comment, love to hear it. Talk about it. David, appreciate you coming on, buddy. And he wants to know, why not slide the portal back? Well, what their hope is, and I think that's what this also is going to address, David, is the fact that it would be better to get the games finished and be able to have the portal open with no games going on, so kids can get recruited, but ultimately those kids that are in the portal can get to their new team, and you won't have to, whether the kid's going to play or not, from that standpoint. But have the season completely done, national championship completely done, have the portal open at the conclusion of that, and allow teams to recruit, allow kids to get to that school and go on their merry way. We'll have to see what all that means here in the near future. But good question in that, and no problem. Appreciate you being here. Although anybody else has any questions, by all means, put it in the chat boxes if you can, and we'll try to get it answered. But let's get back into what we were starting here tonight with the concept of a kind of a power rating. Is that now we've got all the spring practices done. Everybody's kind of, got themselves in the positions that they're in. It's really kind of a dead period in the sense that there's not much going on when you talk about individual teams other than recruiting. Indiana's doing quite well, getting top kids in, and that continues to be a very big positive for SIG and the guys. As the coaches now go out on the road, they can be out on the road for the next 3 weeks, and they're coming in contact with the 27, 28 class, also checking in on the 26 class if they're in that area. But it's been a full speed ahead on the 27 class, and the Purcell kid that's the Indiana's commit at quarterback competed in the Elite 11 out on the East Coast in New Jersey this past weekend and did really well, and got a chance to see him throw in that Elite 11. And he's a lefty, but he can sling it now. He can spin the ball. So it was good to see that kid's performance and know that he's a commit to Indiana. But, right now we know who's real, maybe who's overrated in some respects as teams, and who's going to be ready to compete for a championship when we talk about this evening. So what I did in this concept, we're going to have three or four different tiers, I guess you could say, of power ratings. We'll talk about each one of them and kind of why I've got them this way, and the teams in it. There's no exact science to this. That's not saying that this is right and others are wrong in that respect. But at the end of the day, it's kind of where we see things at for not just Indiana, but how it goes with the rest of the guys and teams in the Big Ten when it comes to that aspect of. Oh, I must have hit the mute button. I appreciate, David, you had let me know that. Going back to this tier and going back to my rambling, but I have Indiana 1, and there is many power ratings out there right now that has Ohio State as number 1. And again, nothing against that, and because Ohio State's got some great players and they're going to be a very good team. Indiana, what I thought they've done is that they've answered some of the questions that they had with the defensive production and who's coming in and who's going to be those guys that are taking over. I do think the defense is going to be really good, as well as the offense. Josh Hoover, I like the fact solidifying at least that, you got Grant Wilson as the backup there, can run the offense, and the emergence of Tyler Cherry. So you feel a little bit better at the quarterback spot in terms of depth. You love the running back room, the wide receiver room. The only question mark for me on offense is tight end, and that's because they're going to be young. But I know the Brock Shot kid, he can play. He can play. And that kid, if he's healthy, he can make an impact. But we'll wait and see because he's going to be a young pup in that regard. You got to give him Indiana the slight edge, 16-0. We all know that in the month of October, if Indiana can get to that game against Ohio State, undefeated, it will be a sight to be seen in Bloomington against the Buckeyes in a game that could be for all the marbles when you think about the Big Ten. So I like that aspect of things. Now, Ohio State, let's face facts. They have got a great core returning to their football team. The same kid at quarterback, that his efficiency last year was unbelievable and his completion percentage was about 80%. He wasn't maybe his best when Indiana got him, and Indiana was able to frustrate them a little bit and him. But you got Jeremiah Smith, who's a guy that can make plays down the field, and you got a defense that's as stingy as Indiana's defense. So that's what you got when you've got the Buckeyes. So when you compare Indiana, Ohio State, you look at both of them, maybe you give an edge to Ohio State in terms of overall athleticism. But you got to say that Indiana and Ohio State could be really neck and neck in that regard. So I got Ohio State at number 2. But again, they got 2 coordinators, which is interesting here, that have NFL experience, not just as the coordinators at the NFL, but as head coaches in the NFL. So Ryan Day has brought in some firepower when it comes to that aspect of their football team. So that one will be interesting to note and see what all transpires, especially in that ball club. But you got Sand, and their offense is going to be a good run offense as well. But I got them at 2. Number 3, I've got Oregon. Look, Dante Moore is a player. He's already projected to be a top first-round draft pick, and that they still got some guys that are coming back for them that were maybe youngsters a year ago that maybe become that impact player that they need. You got, Raiola is there as Dante Moore's backup. So you got to think that Oregon is going to rebound pretty decently. And look, they're 13-2 overall. And those 2 losses were to Indiana. So it's not like they were, completely off the board in that respect. So Dan Lanning will have it. The 4th team I've got in the top tier in Michigan and Kyle Whittingham. There is no question that Kyle Whittingham is going to make Michigan better with what he brought from Utah. He brought some transfers from there. You got Bryce Underwood, the young quarterback that can be a good quarterback, but right now is not. It'll be interesting to see if Bryce Underwood is going to be the guy, but we'll see. You got to feel that he is, but the other guy that came with the coach from Utah, kid, had a little better spring, but that has to do being familiar with the offense and stuff. But you got that aspect of things on that offensive group, a good run game, running backs coming in. I lost that kid's name, that running back. Oh, Jordan Marshall. That kid returns for Michigan, 932 yards, and they're going to have a really good offensive line. And then on defense, again, top-notch defense that they will have there at Indiana. But on that aspect and that hire of Kyle Whittingham was a big-time hire for Michigan. And I do think that top 4 teams are all going to be teams that are going to be talked about pretty much during the year. Michigan, maybe in my aspect, even when I thought about Michigan and rating them there at 9-4, I gave the advantage to coaching there because I do think the Big Ten has brought in 3 or 4 championship level coaches. Chesney at UCLA, Kyle Wynn in Michigan. You got Fitz at Michigan State and Campbell at Penn State. So the coaching that's in the Big Ten may be the strongest it's ever been, and will rival any SEC head coach that's out there. So again, that plays a factor into it as well. Let's take a look at the tier 2 aspect of this. And these are the teams that were kind of in the middle of the pack, so to speak. And these teams all played well. You can't take anything away from them. USC at 9-4. You got to think Lincoln Riley probably has a little bit of a hot seat. Here's the guy that they went out and stole from Oklahoma. And I know he felt going to USC and the type of program and tradition that they were going to be able to return to that championship form, but it just hasn't happened. And this probably will be the year, in my opinion, that his seat's probably a little hot, but he's got some guys coming back. He's got his quarterback back from last year. He's got Gary Patterson coming in, the old TCU coach, to run his defense. So you know that they're going to be more disciplined in that arena. And, they lost some receivers, but again, the talent that they will have at USC will be second to none. It's just putting it all together and being on the same page. And the games that they lost last year, it was due to stupid mistakes that they made. But quarterback is back. Big solid kid. I can't think of his name right now. It's not on the tip of my tongue. But you got to think that USC is going to be somewhere there knocking around, snooping around that top standard, with these guys as contenders. Then you got Washington, 8-5 a year ago, still building the program there. You got Williams, the quarterback, that is phenomenal. He's a kid that have a little drama. He kind of entered the portal thinking he was going to leave, and they were able to retain him. And they've got the Jonah Coleman kid at running back or receiver. You got Boston as well out there playing. So Washington's a team that if they get hot and start stringing games together, kind of like what Indiana has done, then it's a team you got to be leery of because they've got that mentality like Indiana, they can't be beat. And we know that that Williams kid can sling it and run it, and he's a big time threat for Washington. And they're a team to keep an eye on. And I think their schedule, if I'm not mistaken, is actually halfway decent. And I'll try to pull it up here in a second, maybe if I can. But you got to like what is going on at Washington as we talk about it. Then the Penn State Nittany Lions I have there in that category, right there. I do think that a 7-6 team, they went through a lot last year. They were picked to be a team that was supposed to be the number one ranked team and go into the playoffs and potentially win the national championship. That all failed, and they're out and got Campbell late in the process. He brought a bunch of transfers from Penn State with him to add to what was already there. And his quarterback came with him, Rocco, and he's a guy that definitely fits that Penn State type of quarterback you're kind of used to seeing. Tough as nails, can throw it, can run it. And Campbell's a guy that will definitely embrace the tradition of Penn State and bring back some of the quote unquote ground and pound attack. And then defensively, again, they've got some guys still left on that side of the ball. When you talk about it, you know, Marcus Neal and Cooper in the secondary. Yeah, David. Yeah, Jaden. I think it's is it Mavia? Yes. Yep. Thank you for that. Appreciate it. And that kid is good, and he's a big, strong kid, and he can sling it. No question with that. But you got to think that Penn State has got some guys that have transferred in with him. I think 20 transfers came in with Campbell from Iowa State, winning culture, into Penn State, a little like Sig, top players from Iowa State coming in and adding that into the mix there. With the defensive guys they brought Bacon, a linebacker is really good, and then Marcus Neal and Jeremiah Cooper in the secondary. So Penn State's another team that you got to be leery of. Their schedule is very, very friendly. And again, a championship mind coach, Matt Campbell. I've got a ton of respect for Matt, known him since he was at Toledo, and he did phenomenal job at Toledo, carried on to Iowa State, kind of like a place that couldn't win. But he got in there and won at Iowa State. And now he's got a chance to revive the Penn State Nittany Lions, and a guy that definitely, excuse me, definitely will embrace the traditions of Penn State. So those three, you got to look as the other top contenders. Maybe they get on a good roll and they can get things going in the right way. But there are also teams that can get in the role on the other side where they start losing some games they shouldn't lose. So again, a good three group of that second level teams in the Big Ten. Then on this third level that I've got, and we'll kind of go through these. If you got any questions, by all means, sling it out. Iowa, 8-4. Coach Ferentz, again, a guy that's been forever at Iowa and has done a tremendous job in his, there at Iowa. Let's see, posted winning conference records in 10 out of the 11 seasons that he's been there. That is phenomenal. And again, you got some guys returning. This Jeremy Klinsky kid that transferred in, he's the guy that is going to be stepping in probably as the QB1. The Gronowski kid was a one-year wonder, but Klinsky is a kid that they've got in the transfer portal. He does have playing experience. And again, what they did last year offensively, kind kind of was hot and cold, and they were trying to think how Gronowski was going to fit into their plan. This year with Heklinski, you can bet they're going to have a little better passing attack as well as their ground game because they do have got some guys back. And then, of course, Phil Parker on defense. They're just tough as nails, especially at home, their defense. Phil Parker, the DC, has been there forever. And, Indiana, they eked one out there in Iowa City. And you know how good Iowa's defense was that day. They're a team that if they can eliminate turnovers, which hurt them last year, they're a team, again, that can be lurking throughout the Big Ten season. Illinois, I have there right in the middle, kind of at that, I guess you'd call it the 9 spot overall. And again, the season didn't go the way they wanted it last year. They were thinking with Luke Altmaier, they had a chance to be a team that could get in the college football playoffs. It never materialized. And again, they've done some good things there at Iowa. It's just not been what you would expect from them. But, there's going to be some retooling offensively because they did lose some kids in there. But they got a Hauser kid from East Carolina, and he was a good player there at East Carolina. Very good passing QB. So he'll fit in the mold of being a quarterback that can sling it off the drop back or put him on the run as well. But again, they're going to have some retooling there on their skill positions. But Bielema thinks that his team coming up here in 26 will have the talent. Of course, they'll be very young in some positions, but they made some changes on defense, and there's a lot of positivity there in Champaign for Brett Bielema. And again, they're a team that just kind of surprises you. They go into the bowl season and they go up against teams that, you may not think they're going to pull something off, and all of a sudden they're beating them like they did South Carolina. And, it's a team too that if they get the right numbers going, again, they're going to have something to say. But as you can see, they were nearly 500 in the Big Ten last year. Then you go to Nebraska. This was Coach Rule in that 10th spot for me. Probably more respect for the Nebraska brand more than anything. Things have not materialized in Husker land for Coach Rule. And there's been a lot of turnover with players. He did fire his defensive coordinator at the end of the year. They brought in Rob Orich from San Diego State, who had one of the top defenses in the country last year. But this is definitely, in my opinion, another hot seat probability for Coach Rule because things have not really gone the way they want. Now, they got to transfer a quarterback to replace Raiola, who left and went to Oregon. Anthony Colander is the quarterback they got. He was at Virginia and UNLV, and he has done some nice things. He led the Mountain West in total offense last year, 293.4 yards, and they've got the Emmett Johnson back at the running back spot. So again, they're going to have the Jimmies and Joes. It's whether they can get them in sync, especially on defense. A little surprised he made the change because the defensive coordinator had been with him forever. And I'm not quite sure they were kind of the problem last year in some respects. Raiola, I think they put that kid in too many bad positions as he was coming up. And it cost them. And even, the kid got frustrated and he's leaving. They fired his uncle, who was the offensive line coach. So there was a little bit of disarray in Husker land, but I got them there at number 10 with that. thinking about what you think on that first kind of 10. If you have any things that you think may be different, let's put it in the chat. Let me know. Say, hey, that was what I had, or no, I'd put this team over that team. Let us know what you feel. We're going to take a break here real quick. When we come back, we'll continue on with this as well as finish up with the Big Ten Reset 2026 early power rankings here on Hoosier Tailgate Live, all on thehoosier.com. Back after this.
Hoosier fans, listen up. If you're serious about the Hoosiers, thehoosier.com is where you need to be. We're talking insider reporting, film breakdowns, recruiting, and transfer portal coverage you won't get anywhere else. And when you subscribe, it's more than just one site. You also get full access to Rivals, On3, and The Athletic at no extra cost. Right now, you can jump in for just $1. Then it renews annually at the regular rate. $1. Total access. No brainer. Head to thehoosier.com and join today.
Hoosier fans, take a moment and soak this in. Indiana is national champions, history made, banners raised, a season we'll talk about forever. And now it's time to wear the moment. Head to My Fanatics store and grab the official Indiana Hoosiers national championship gear. T-shirts, hoodies, hats, and championship designs built for fans who lived every snap, every fourth down, every win. This is authentic Fanatics gear, not knockoffs. Designed to last, comfortable, and ready to rep anywhere you go. Whether you're at the game, around town, or watching next season, knowing who sits on top, this is how you show it. Supplies won't last forever, and once it's gone, it's gone. So don't wait. Hit the Hoosier Tailgate Fanatics store, lock in your Indiana National Champions gear, and wear it with pride, because this championship is forever.
Welcome back here to Hoosier Tailgate Live on a Thursday night, talking a little bit of power rankings for the 2026 early power rankings, I should say, for the Big Ten. Appreciate you being along. And we kind of went through some of the 10. We're going to continue on here. If you got a question, let's see. David had a question. Get you in here, David. Better blow it up here. Nebraska has been disappointing for a long time now. They're no longer the blue. Yeah, they went downhill with their hiring of Scott Frost. When you remember he had that UFC team, went undefeated, and they brought him in, and it's going to be a situation where they just can't get it going. And like I said, I think Coach Rule, he's going to be a little hot this year when it comes to all that. Let's look on here to the next. Whoops, sorry about that. Wrong ones there, dummy. The next rankings here, and we'll get them on here a little bit. The tier 4 teams. Now, these are the teams I had, quote, questions to answer. What do I mean by questions to answer? Do they have the right guys in the right places? And, the first team is Minnesota. There's no question that PJ Fleck has done very well at Minnesota. They've won at least 8 games in 4 of the last 5 seasons, as well as winning all 5 bowl appearances that they've been in. This year, they got some guys returning, but they did lose. Let's see, they lost their big-time safety to Oregon. They went, I think it's Petrie, I think is his name. Coy Petrie went to Oregon. They kind of did it again, taking a top safety away, kind of like what they did with Purdue. Goldsby switched from safety to corner, who's another good one. And Kerry Brown, he was a sophomore last year, started all their games. So defensively, they've got some guys they had to move around in that respect. But looks like they have some talent there that they can go to. So that's going to be one thing with them on defense is trying to get the right 11 on the field and productive. Lindsey was a redshirt freshman, the quarterback there last year, Drake Lindsey, and he threw for like 2,400 yards. He had 18 touchdowns, only 6 interceptions. So he's a guy that can sling it, does it well with it. He threw three picks on October 25th against Iowa, and he did not throw another interception for the rest of the year and won 8 games. And so that is pretty stellar performance by the young guy. And they had some losses that were tight. Let's see, they lost to Northwestern by 3, I believe. So again, PJ's been there. I got a lot of respect for PJ. He's kind of a guy that you either like or dislike because he's not for everybody. He's got a personality of his own, and he has a way of doing things, and he believes in what he's doing, and that's what he's done at Minnesota. And you got to say that their success over the last few years has been good in that regard. But I think I typed that record wrong. They were 8-4 this year, so my apologies to the Gophers because that's wrong. I don't know what happened there with my graphics and stuff. So my apologies. They were 8-5 last year, and they had, like I said, they played pretty well and played some games pretty decently. The Wildcats got a new Aiden Childs transferred in from Michigan State, so you got to look at him as a guy that potentially could be a igniter there at Michigan or Northwestern. And I do think these guys are going to be pretty good this year, again, with Aiden Childs in the mix. Let's see here. They were 7-6 a year ago, and they got Chip Kelly in as the offensive coordinator. And that's going to be a huge benefit. And at the same time, a little strange because, you didn't think Kelly, who left Ohio State, he was the head coach at UCLA, went to Ohio State, won the national championship, went back to the NFL, I think in Vegas, if I'm not mistaken, and then gets fired. And now he's back at the collegiate ranks, but he's at Northwestern. So that's kind of an interesting dynamic when you think about it, what that means for them. But you got to understand that Northwestern last year had some, big wins at 7-6. Remember that game? They beat Penn State on the road, and they've got some players that you would say are solid Big Ten players. And if Aiden Childs can develop there under Chip Kelly, that gives their offense something because not only can he throw it decently, he can run it. He's the threat there. And he played really good against Indiana. So you got to have respect for that aspect of it for them. And then, you got some guys that Elgin the second, you've got Ricky, let's see, Drew Wagner's another guy that's back. So, and then their defense, they got some guys on defense, Fitzgerald, and I think it's Fuzzle. And then they did lose the Saka kid, that big defensive end who was really good. He transferred to A&M. So that was a big loss for them in that respect. But I like the fact that, Kelly's there. I do think he adds intrigue to what he can do offensively. I do think he's a good play caller. But again, they're kind of not where they probably would like to be in their situation. And right now, you got to think that if Chip Kelly can get some things rolling offensively and Aiden Childs is the guy, they always have pretty good defenses at Northwestern. That's going to bump them up again in a situation that could be huge for that aspect of things when you talk about their success last year as a whole. And it's going to be an interesting, this graphic. Let's see, UCLA, Bob Chesney's there. He was there a year last year. Um, he was at James Madison. He took over for Sig there. That's an interesting dynamic. I do think he did bring some kids with him. That graphic's at least right in that regard. But he brings a championship attitude to the mix. You know, he's a guy that, you know, has won like Sig everywhere he's been. And he's also been a guy that has a plan and he implements it. Um, it'll be an interesting how he handles the LA area. I mean, it's not an easy area to go live in terms of, you know, housing cost and things of that nature. And you're in a market that's dominated by big time sports as well as USC. So they're going to have to make their own noise. And I'm sure that Chesney will bring the attitude that, you know, he's won everywhere he's been, like Sig, and he's got a plan and he's going to utilize it. And they brought some guys with him, like Sig did from JMU, that, you know, brings that culture in there. And you know how important that was the first year for Coach Sig and the staff. Those guys that came in from James Madison were huge because they were able to implement the mindset, what's structure, what's expected and stuff. And all over, you got to feel that they're going to be a pretty darn good football team with some of the guys that they got returning out there. I do think Nico's back in that regard. And yeah, they do have a top five. And that's the one thing, David, that I was going to say with Chesney. He is a really good recruiter. And his guys that are assistants under him have done a great job. But remember, it's all about that staffing of your player personnel department. And they've done a good job in that arena as well. And so, you know, they got some guys there. You know, they've got Wayne Knight as the kid that got to watch. I believe he's a running back. Nico is back, I believe. So you know, he's the kid. We know what he can do. It's whether he can get the mindset to have the consistency week in, week out. That's what's hurt him. You saw what he did at Indiana, first play of the game, interception. And, you know, next thing you know, they're out of it completely. That's what he's got to correct. And I know Chesney will be able to do it. So it'll be interesting how UCLA fares this year in the Big Ten. And we know it's not easy on teams out west because of all the travel that they have. But Chesney, I like the hire. It'll be interesting to see how that all plays out. They got some guys in from Florida. No, I'm sorry. They've got, let's see, I'm trying to think who they got with them. Da, 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 da. But I can't. Yeah, they, you know, a lot of publications have them as a team that will have the biggest turnaround in 26. So that'll be interesting to see how that all goes. But I do think it comes down to how Nico plays. And if he's hot and he can main hot, then they can win some ball games. There's no question about it. They can win a lot of ball games. So it'll be interesting to see with that. And then the final tier here, that I'll see if I can get it up. Hopefully my graphics are correct with everything. You got Maryland back, and we know that Coach Locks is back in the top seat of it all, and he's going to be I like Locks. I mean, I've known Locks. He's a good, really good coach. He does great with the quarterbacks, and there's always been some reason that has impacted their team. And last year, you know, they had a little success in that game against Indiana in that regard. And next thing you know, Indiana, I think they scored how many points straight against them. But, they're a team 4-8 a year ago. You got Malik Washington, the quarterback. Man, he was a good player as a freshman. He threw for almost 3,000 yards, broke a record of completions with 273. And you got to like the fact that he's got that experience back, which will help that in that regard. Now, Locke's, he's 37-49 at Maryland. And they've had back-to-back losing seasons. So the big thing for him will be, can they get themselves on a string where they turn it around? Because you got to feel that this is his year. And if it's not, he's got to be on the hot seat. Made a good hire in Trickett. And I do think that they got some ball players because he's done a great job recruiting, especially down there in Maryland. It's been one of those things where he can get the players. Now it's just putting it all together. But I like him as a coach, and he's a guy that I think a lot of in terms of how he does things, because he does things the right way. Got Rutgers there also. They weren't 4-8; they were 5-7 a year ago with Coach Schiano. He's another coach that's kind of went back to the promised lands, and he's been there. He's 5-7 last year, but that he's a guy that'll grind. He's made some changes, brought some guys back. He hired the head coach away from South Dakota, who was really good out there, Travis Johnson, to be the new defensive coordinator for him. And, he hired him based upon what he had done at South Dakota. And he is now there with Schiano, with Rutgers. They were 130th nationally in some categories. One was the successful play rate. They weren't as good there. So that was something that needed to be retooled. Quarterback, that's one thing that they'll have to replace there. They did get a transfer, Longren from Boston College, and Surface, I believe, will be the starter, but a good battle because what they brought in. And they did some things offensively last year. It's a defense that just totally cost them a lot. So we'll see where they end up. They got some players just like everybody does. So, and a good coach with Schiano. And that, means he's going to be a guy that will have his teams ready. Can they put it together? Who knows? You got Purdue in there as well. Put them there with that last, team, the 2-10 a year ago. Had to rebuild. They did. They brought a lot of transfers in. I think they feel better where they're at overall as a team in terms of their depth and player availability. They are a team that if they can get some hope, they're going to be a team that can do well. Because Kevin Kane, he brought back as his defensive coordinator. He was with him at UNLV. And they added some players into the mix. Let's see, Townsend, the wide receivers, back. Nitro Tuggle, the kid that transferred in from Georgia, who's up from here at Napanee. Again, they've got some ball players. It'll be a season to see how Barry Odom fares this year, having a full year now to get his guys in, the guys that he wants, via portal and the recruiting, and getting the guys out that, didn't want to abide by what he was doing. And therefore, he said adios and replaced them. So that's going to be a situation for them to get themselves in a position this coming year. We'll see what all happens. They did add some portal transfers on defense. Trey Moore, South San Diego, Hayden from Illinois, Specca from Penn State, and Hudson Miller from Toledo. Moore was a 6'4" guy, had 6 sacks last year and 3 forced fumbles. He should be a help for their pass rush. So they do got some guys coming back for Kevin Kane, who's a really good coordinator. And like I said, got respect for Coach Odom. He did a heck of a job out in UNLV. He resurrected them when he was there. We'll see how he goes and fares this year at Purdue. I do think they're better than 2-10, and we'll go from that. So looking at it, again, overall for 18 teams, kind of have all, they're listed. I'm sure there will be debate. I mean, I've seen some power rankings that has Indiana third behind Oregon and Ohio State. I'm not sure that tracks in my mind, because I do think Indiana answered what they needed to do with some of the positions and the fact that they got Hoover. But again, yes, they've won a national championship. Yes, they've won the Big Ten championship, but I'm not quite there overall from the spectators out there where they're going to have Indiana in that top arena over Ohio State, Oregon, because, they're the new kid on the block. Okay, David, let's see if I can get this here. Who was a sleeper pick this year from the lower tiers? The one team that I didn't talk about, now maybe I must have skipped over, was Michigan State. Pat Fitzgerald is a big time coach that's won. He won at Northwestern. He got caught up in something that basically was not his fault, according to the lawyers and attorneys. And he's got a chance now to go back and be the guy at Penn, there at Michigan State, that kind of fits his, who he is as a coach. So he's another guy that will embrace the culture and what Michigan State is, and, got to replace the quarterback because, Child's left. We got Nick Marsh. So there's there's a hole there at wide receiver. So there's some things there for Michigan State to build upon. It'll be interesting because he did get quite a few transfers from P4 programs. Got some guys from South Carolina, and some top guys from some G5 schools like UConn and that. But their question mark is who's going to be their QB. It's that, I think I can't pronounce this kid's name. Maklovic, who played against Indiana when they were here, and Childs went out of the game. So they do have some stuff there, and we'll see what all happens. But I like them because like I said, as much as I like Kyle Whittingham's hiring and Campbell's hiring, I do think Michigan State made a great hire in Pat Fitzgerald and what he brings to the table. Can he get it implemented there? Can he get the guys that can believe in what he's about? Because, here's a guy that's been all his coaching career at Northwestern, a different environment in Michigan State. Now he's not going to have some of the constraints that he had at Northwestern in terms of the academic profiles. So we'll see what all happens there. But if I had to look at a team that may step up and do things, I'm still a Luke Fickell fan at Wisconsin. I had them at 14. And they're a team that, again, didn't want to talk over too much about them, but I think I went 4-8 last year. Fickell's definitely on the hot seat. You're going to have, some different ideas now with the offense there, more Wisconsin-ish. And they got the Colton Joseph kid, the kid that took the opening play of Indiana's 2025 season, 87 out the gate for a touchdown. He had 2 rushing TDs that day. They got him from Old Dominion. So he's going to come in there and be their quarterback, and that fits their mindset and style. He was player of the year, threw for 2,600 yards, rushed for another 1,000 at Old Dominion, and he accounted for 34 touchdowns. So I just think that's a good thing for them and who they got with them to run the show there. And Wisconsin still has the offensive line. Now they lost the Bruner kid to us, to Indiana, so that was a loss for them. But there's something about, I just think Fick, maybe I'm too caught up in kind of what he did at Cincinnati and thinking that's going to happen there at Wisconsin. But he struggled there. But I do think that's a team that could poke their head out and make some things happen. Penn State is another team because of their schedule and because who they got. So those are kind of the two teams that I think, man, they could make some noise in the Big Ten this year. And, you look at the teams in the Big Ten, who the Big Ten is about and what they've got coaching wise. The Big Ten has elevated themselves since the merger with some of the Pac-12 teams in terms of top teams that have some top-notch players and coaches. Yeah, Robert, he turned them upside down. That's for sure. But you got to think, in some respects, things go the right way with that. But let me see here. Let's see. Jason, Michigan State's got a good one with Coach Fitz. Yep, I agree with that. You think maybe Nebraska is going to be a team that could turn it around this year? And quite right. There's another team that I think Matt Rule is on a little bit of the hot seat, but you got to, he's a good coach too. And, sometimes it takes a little time. And that's what Sig has done. He's ruined it for everybody else in that regard. David thinks Wisconsin. And like you said, Robert said Signetti turned it all upside down. And there's definitely caused a little bit of a commotion in the college football world, and a lot of coaches had to say, how come he did it in 3 years and we haven't done it at all, type of questions. So it's not been easy for some coaches out there. That's how I see the power rankings in the Big Ten, right, wrong, or indifferent. If you get something different ranking wise, just put it in the comments up on the YouTube page. Like I said, I read that all the time when you guys got questions. And if you got time and you want to do a power ranking as well, by all means, hit it and see where you come out with some of this. Because again, like I said, there's a lot of really good teams traditionally in the Big Ten. And I think it's going to be a year where, again, there are going to be some really good ball teams, and it's going to take 60 minutes each and every week. And Indiana is going to have to play right there on the edge every week because everybody's going to be coming at them for sure. Well, again, thank you for joining me tonight on the Hoosier Tailgate live on thehoosier.com. We'll be back next week, 7:30 again, for more coverage of Indiana Hoosier football, all right here on thehoosier.com. But for now, I'm the coach, Shannon Griffith, and you've been watching the Hoosier Tailgate live here on thehoosier.com. We'll see you next Thursday night. Have a great weekend. And if you're traveling around for Mother's Day, be safe. Happy Mother's Day to all our moms out there as well. We'll see you next week.